Chosen one, something has changed in the world we can't see, and if you felt a quiet urge to stop and listen right now, it's not just your imagination, it is in line. When something important is already in motion, heaven has a way of interrupting normal moments. This is one of those times when the Anointed One interrupts. You didn't get this message by chance, by scrolling at the right time, or by an algorithm that just happened to put it in front of you. This meeting was set up a long time ago. Before today, heaven had already set this time aside for you to hear because something has started to move on your behalf. Before your thoughts started to ask questions about your future, heaven had already set this time aside for you. For a long time, it felt like silence, like doors were closed and other people were walking through theirs, but the truth is that what looked like a delay was really preparation. Ecclesiastes 3:1 tells us that God has set a time for everything to happen. Chosen one, this season you are in right now is not the end of your story. This is the moment that changes everything. The pressure you felt, the strange feeling in your spirit, and the sense that something is about to change are not signs of confusion. That proves it. Stay with this message because heaven is about to show you what it has already set in motion. Listen closely, chosen one. What has been going on around you is not random stress or empty feelings. Heaven is not just watching your season from afar, it is already a part of it. What you have called a strange heaviness and tried to name but couldn't explain is often what it feels like when the spirit starts to notice movement before the eye can see it. Anointed one, there are times when God lets your soul feel the change before your situation can show it. Faith isn't built by seeing first, it's built by feeling the weight of His presence even when everything else looks the same. That's why these last few days may have felt extra intense. You might have woken up before the sun rose with your heart racing, as if something inside you was listening before your mind was fully awake. You might have been in the kitchen, folding clothes, stuck in traffic, staring at your phone, or walking through another boring afternoon when all of a sudden, everything inside you stopped. Not peaceful in the usual sense, but still in a deeper sense, as if your spirit stood up because something you couldn't see had come into the room. Don't ignore those times, chosen one. The soul can be quiet at times because it is at a divine turning point, but this is where the fight often gets really bad. The enemy rushes in to change the meaning of waiting when God is about to show what He has already set in motion. He whispers that the door hasn't opened yet because you missed your chance. He plays back that conversation you wish had gone differently. He tries to use those times when you put off making a decision, when you didn't want to take advantage of an opportunity, or when you prayed with tired faith as proof against you. He wants you to think that what was once yours has now been given to someone else, that the promise has moved on, and that you have disqualified yourself in some small but permanent way. But anointed one, that voice is not the truth. That voice is a false accusation that sounds like discernment. Fear doesn't speak over your life the way the Lord does. Fear tells you that you missed it. God tells you that I'm still working. Fear tells you that you messed it up. God tells you that He was building through it. Fear says it's over. God says it's still happening. Jeremiah 29:11 does not talk about a plan that falls apart as soon as you have a bad day. It shows you the heart of a God whose plans for you are still going strong and full of promise. The worst thing that happened to you this week did not change what the Lord said about your life. Your tiredness didn't stop you from doing what you were meant to do. Heaven did not change its mind about you because you were hesitant. You are not stuck in this middle place because God has left you. You are standing here because something important is coming together. There are times when the Lord won't let you move forward quickly because the version of you that only knows how to survive can't handle what's coming. He has to make you stronger before he shows you, before he gives you more responsibility. He must strengthen your inner frame. And yes, this includes provision. It has resources. It has doors. It includes the kind of growth that affects not only your life but also the lives of those who are supposed to obey you. But in the kingdom of God, divine provision is never shallow. When heaven gives you a lot of something, it also gives you a job. When heaven opens a door, it also makes you more responsible. So the work that isn't obvious is important. This is why you need to stop thinking of the hallway as a punishment. The hallway doesn't show that you were rejected, it shows that you were ready. The old door had to close, not because it wasn't useful, but because it couldn't hold who you are becoming. And the new door hasn't opened yet because God is doing more than just moving you. He is changing how much you can do. A lot of people waste their time in the hallway trying to reopen what God has already closed or sitting in passive grief and calling it surrender. But if you know how to look at it, the hallway is holy ground. It is the end of false urgency. It is where you take off your old identities. It is where heaven shows you how to stand up without leaning on what used to be you. Consider how gold is made better. The fire is not against the gold. The fire is against everything that can't stay in it. The things you've been going through haven't been meant to ruin your calling in the same way. It has been showing you what you can't take with you into the next chapter. It has been facing the habits that come from fear. It has been finding the deals you made in tired places. It has been making you less reliant on coping mechanisms that used to help you get through tough times but would ruin the blessing you have been praying for. Chosen one, God is not only getting ready for what is coming to you, He is also getting you ready for what is coming. And if we're being honest, this is where the real healing starts. A lot of people don't just have trouble with waiting, they also have trouble with the quiet belief that God's goodness is for other people but not for them. They lower their expectations at some point in the fight. They stop asking in a bold way. They stop thinking of themselves as someone who can really get, keep, and take care of what heaven wants to give them. They don't say out loud that they don't believe the promise. Instead, they make it smaller in their minds until it feels safe enough not to let them down. But Anointed One, a diminished expectation cannot sustain a complete promise. Romans 12:2 tells us that change starts with changing our minds, because the outside world can't hold on to what the inside world still doesn't want. So right now, let this sink in. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not outside of God's plan begging to be let back in. You are standing on a holy threshold. And heaven is already there. Not everything that feels like pressure is opposition. Sometimes it's the stress of becoming. Sometimes it's the sound of an old self breaking down. Sometimes the atmosphere is just right before breakthrough starts to happen. And in this next part, Chosen One, we are going to find out about the secret agreement that has been trying to lower your hopes and stop you from getting what God has already set in motion. Before the next door can open in your life, something deeper must be revealed. Chosen One, a lot of people pray for a breakthrough while still unknowingly protecting the belief system that keeps them from getting it. And I say that with love, not judgment. Most of these agreements were not made out of pride, they were made out of pain. At some point on your journey, when disappointment seemed louder than promise, something inside you made a decision. It wasn't something you said out loud or consciously declared, it was a quiet conclusion you came to. It might have sounded like this: maybe this level of blessing isn't for me. Maybe I should stop expecting so much. Maybe I should be thankful for small things and stop reaching for the bigger vision God once put in my heart. The moment that belief settled into your heart, it became a ceiling, not because God changed his plan, but because your expectations shrank to protect your heart from more disappointment. Many people think that the enemy's best weapon is attack, but most of the time, his best weapon is agreement. If he can get you to accept a smaller identity, lower expectations, and a smaller vision of your future, you will unknowingly build the cage that holds you. But heaven did not make you to be in a cage. Heaven made you to be in charge. That's why the Bible keeps bringing up identity, not behavior first, not circumstances first, but who you are. This is because the promise always fits the person. When God gives someone a bigger job, he first shows them who they really are in his eyes. There is a moment in the Bible that shows this pattern very clearly. The 12 spies that Moses sent into the promised land all saw the same land, the same chance, and the same promise, but 10 of them came back with a report full of fear. They said the land was full of giants, and then they said something that gave away a lot. They said, "We looked like grasshoppers to ourselves." Pay attention to what they didn't say. They didn't say that God thought they were grasshoppers. The giants didn't even say they were grasshoppers. They thought of themselves as grasshoppers. That one thought inside you, chosen one, destroyed the inheritance of a whole generation. They had already left Egypt. They had already witnessed miracles. They had already crossed the sea that had once held them captive. But even though they were in a different place, their sense of self had not yet been renewed. They were free, but they still thought like slaves. And they thought they were small, so the promise they were standing in front of seemed impossible to reach. This is where the message gets personal, because a lot of you who are listening right now have been through things that should have broken you. You went through times when prayers seemed to go unanswered. You went through times when friends broke up, chances slipped away, or dreams took longer than you thought they would to come true. But you kept going. You kept saying your prayers. You kept hoping that God was still writing something in your life. But deep down, there may still be a small reflex of caution, a quiet hesitation when something good gets close, and a voice that says, "Don't hope too much." This is a reflex that gets ready for disappointment even when something good happens. That reflex is not wisdom, chosen one. It is what is left over from wounds that never got the healing truth from heaven. And God is facing it now because the ceiling that pain made can't hold what he has already started. You see, divine provision isn't just about money or chances, it's about getting things in line. When heaven gives you more, it's not just giving you things, it is giving someone power, responsibility, and a goal who knows that wealth in the kingdom of God is meant to be shared. It's fuel for the job. It is a way to make an impact. It is the ability to create what God put in your heart long before you had the tools to do it. That's why the time to get ready is so important. Every time you had to wait, you learned something new about yourself. Every door that was closed made you rely less on what people thought and more on what God said. Every moment of silence made it harder to trust when nothing around you backed up the promise. And now you are in a moment when heaven is asking you a question. Will you keep believing the smaller story your past wrote about you, or will you finally accept the bigger identity that God has already given you? The door that is about to open is not just a door of opportunity, it is a door of duty. It is a door that will need you to be brave, have faith, and think differently. You will need to go into rooms that the old you would have thought you weren't ready for, and that's why the Lord has been working behind the scenes. You, chosen one, must be able to handle what comes with it when the door opens. Chosen one. This is where the mystery of divine timing starts to show itself in a way that many people get wrong. When we talk about God's timing, a lot of people picture a calendar in heaven that the Lord is waiting for a certain day to arrive before he keeps his promise. But the deeper truth is much more personal than that. Divine timing isn't just about when something happens, when it comes. It's about who you are now. The time of your life that was chosen for you is not only written in heaven's calendar, it is written in how you changed. Every season you walked through was shaping the thing that would one day hold the promise. Every pause, every awkward silence, and every door that was closed was not just time passing, it was the beginning of something. Heaven wasn't ignoring you, it was getting you ready. Remember the mornings when you had to choose to have faith, even though your heart was tired. Remember the nights when you prayed and had more questions than answers. Think about the times when you had to keep going even though things around you were unclear. Those times weren't empty chapters, they were like chisels in God's hands, shaping your character, testing your strength, and sharpening your judgment. The Lord can give some things to a person who has been broken and rebuilt that he can't safely give to someone who has only known comfort, because stewardship is not easy, it is about giving up. This is why the story of Esther teaches us something deep about how God prepares us. Esther didn't just wake up one day and have power. There was a time of quiet growth long before the crown touched her head. No one celebrated the months of preparation that went into it. There were rules, instructions, and hidden changes that changed her heart before anyone could see them. And then there was a time when her cousin Mordecai said something that has been passed down through the years. He asked, "Who knows if you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" That wasn't just a word of encouragement, it was a revelation. He was telling her that the intersection of her past pain, her unexpected position, and the crisis surrounding her people was not a coincidence, it was a building. God had been putting things in place, shaping her character, and arranging her life so that when the time came, she would be in the right place at the right time. The same thing is happening in your life, chosen one. You have thought about parts of your story and wondered why things had to happen the way they did. For example, why did some doors close so suddenly? Why did some relationships end? And why did some seasons of obscurity last longer than you thought? But heaven doesn't let things go to waste. The pieces you called scattered were actually the building blocks. There was a lesson in every trial. Every time you were let down, it made you see things more clearly. Every moment of endurance strengthened a part of your spirit that will soon be very important for what is to come. The truth is that the promise that is coming into your life is bigger than the person you were when you started, and that's why change was needed. If God had given you the next chapter of your life too soon, it might have seemed like a blessing, but it would have felt like pressure. What you prayed for would have made things worse instead of better. The assignment would have been too much for the old you, who hadn't yet learned anything from the journey. But now things are different. The person who is standing here today is not the same person who first started praying for a breakthrough. You see things in a new way now. You hear things differently now. You can see motives, patterns, and spiritual movements more clearly now. Your faith has been stretched, tested, and cleaned up so that it no longer needs things to be perfect. That is the quiet sign that the preparation is almost done. That's why the tension you're feeling right now is so different. This isn't the same kind of waiting you did in previous seasons. This waiting has hope. It feels like something is pushing against the edge of your life, like a door that is about to swing open. The atmosphere around you can become very intense right before God shows you what He has been building. It's not chaotic, but charged. It is like the calm that comes over the sky before a storm breaks with rain. The clouds start to gather, the air gets thicker, and people who are sensitive can tell that something is about to happen even before the first drop falls. You are in that kind of spiritual atmosphere, chosen one. You are not being punished for the pressure you feel, it is looking forward to. The change you feel is not confusion, it is in line. Heaven isn't rushing to make your future, it's been putting it together piece by piece while you lived through seasons that felt normal. The question isn't if God has something planned for you, the question is if you are ready to take on the identity that can handle it. And this leads us to something even deeper that a lot of people don't even think about. Even after everything is ready, there is one hidden pattern that can quietly cause delays in a person's life. This pattern has nothing to do with enemies or bad situations outside of you. It exists in the space that you can't see between who God says you are and who you've unconsciously agreed to be, chosen one. This invisible space between who God says you are and who you have quietly agreed to be is where many destinies stall, not because heaven has withdrawn a promise, and not because the enemy is stronger than the calling on your life, but because identity has not yet fully aligned with assignment. You see, every time life gives you a chance to take on something bigger, more responsibility, more power, more resources, there is often a quiet reaction inside you. Something inside stops. Something inside stops for a moment, and that pause isn't always fear in its most obvious form. At times, it looks like caution, it can look like humility at times, it sometimes calls itself real, but if we look closely, we see that behind those polite words is a quiet voice asking, am I really the one who can carry this? That question is where the battle often begins. Anointed one, when the mind still holds on to an old identity, it will unconsciously fight against the doors it asked for. Someone might ask God for growth but still see themselves as limited. They might pray for power, but they still think they should stay out of sight. They may hope for help, but deep down they don't think they are the kind of person who can handle abundance. And when those beliefs inside you aren't questioned, they turn into invisible walls. This is why changing who you are is so important in the kingdom of God. God doesn't just give someone a new job, He shows them a new way to see themselves. Take another look at the pattern we saw in the Bible earlier. Even though the Israelites had left Egypt, they still thought about it. They had crossed the sea, but their minds were still stuck in the past when they were slaves. When they got to the edge of the promised land, the biggest problem wasn't the giants in front of them, it was the way they saw themselves in their own minds. Chosen one, a lot of people who believe in you are going through the same thing. They have been freed from seasons that used to define them. They have made it through storms that almost broke them. They have seen God help them get through things they never thought they could, but a part of their internal story still talks like they used to be. But heaven doesn't judge you based on your worst moment. Heaven sees you as the person God made you to be. And when the Lord starts to open doors that are in line with your purpose, those doors often make you face the old story you've been telling yourself. You might suddenly get invited to places that feel strange. You may get chances that make you feel like you can do more than you can. You might not expect resources to start moving in new ways. And at that moment, something inside may say, "This can't really be for me." That whisper is the last sound of the old self. But I want to be clear with your spirit right now, chosen one. When God puts someone in a certain place, He doesn't make mistakes. He opens a door because he has already made the person who will walk through it ready. The preparation you went through was not pointless pain, it was done on purpose. Those times when you had to rebuild your faith taught you how to tell the difference between good and bad. Those times when you felt like no one was paying attention to you made you more humble. When you weren't sure you would get what you needed, you had to trust God more than you ever could have needed comfort. What seemed like a fight was actually training. What seemed like a delay was actually making things stronger. What sounded like silence was actually instruction. And now, the version of you that is standing here has a depth that could only have come from the journey you took. But before the next door can fully open, one more pattern needs to be shown. The voice that holds us back doesn't always sound like fear. It sounds wise at times. It sounds like every time you hoped for something and then didn't get it. It makes you think about the risks you took that didn't pay off. It tells you every time you put your faith in someone and they let you down. The voice sounds real because those memories are real. It feels like the right thing to do. It seems like the part of you that just wants to keep your heart safe. But chosen one, God's wisdom doesn't tell you to make your life smaller. Real wisdom shows you how to move forward with care, not how to always be careful. It is not wise to always tell you to stay small, safe, and hidden. Fear is wearing a mask that looks good. Fear looks at your past. It knows what has let you down in the past. It gathers proof of every painful moment and shows it to you as proof that having strong faith is dangerous. Fear, on the other hand, never tells the whole story. It never reminds you of the miracles that got you through those same times. It never talks about the strength you found in the middle of the storm. It never talks about how God helped you even when things seemed impossible. Fear changes the record so you don't move forward, and if you let that voice sit at the table of your choices for long enough, it will slowly bring down the ceiling of your life. But right now, something important is going on, chosen one. You are starting to see that voice for what it really is. And the first step to taking away its power is to recognize it. You need to listen to a different voice now that God has set things in motion. This voice calls you higher, reminds you who you really are, and won't let your past define your future. And as we move forward, if this message is making you feel better and helping you see things more clearly, you can quietly support this work by clicking the link in the comments. This will help us keep sharing these words with the people who need them most. There is something even stronger than fear, and it comes from the times when your heart waited for validation but never got it. Chosen one, this is where the message goes to a place that many people stay away from because it touches the most sensitive parts of the heart. There is often something much more personal underneath the fear, the doubt, and the careful caution that has guided many of your choices. There is a quiet memory of a time when you thought someone would see you, but they didn't. A lot of people have a wound that they don't talk about that happened long before they became spiritually aware. It came from the places where affirmation should have been given but wasn't. Maybe it was a parent who never saw the gift in you. Maybe a mentor didn't see your potential. It could have been a relationship where you were loyal but never appreciated, and in that disappointment, something inside you came to a quiet conclusion. If the people closest to me couldn't see how valuable I was, maybe there was nothing special to see. Chosen one. That conclusion is one of the most powerful lies the human heart can believe, not because it sounds mean, but because it sounds true when pain is involved. When affirmation is lacking, identity frequently seeks external validation for definition. The soul starts asking other people to confirm what only heaven can say. And when those people don't see what God put inside you, your heart might think that their silence is the final word. But heaven never let people vote on your fate. God had already told you who you were before the people who let you down were even born, and before the voices that shaped your childhood ever gave their thoughts. Your calling didn't start when someone finally saw you. Before you took your first breath, your purpose was written down. God tells the prophet in Jeremiah 1:5, "Before I formed you in the womb I knew you." This is a powerful reminder. It is who you are. It means that the way you define your life did not come from how other people reacted to you. It came from God's mind, and if your identity started there, then the silence of others could never take it away. But a lot of people who are chosen still have the habit of waiting for permission to do what heaven has already allowed. They don't want to lead until someone asks them to. They don't want to build until someone agrees with their idea. They are hesitant to accept help because they still feel unqualified in some way. But Anointed One, you can't get through this season by borrowing other people's approval. There won't be unanimous support for the doors that are starting to open. Some people won't get what God is doing in your life. Some people will get your growth wrong. Some people will even question the path you think you should take. And if your identity still depends on them recognizing you, you'll always make yourself smaller to fit in. But the job God has given you requires you to be free of that need. The next chapter isn't about showing people how valuable you are. It's about taking care of what heaven has given you. That stewardship could include things you thought were out of your reach. It could give you chances to have more power than you ever thought possible. It could mean more money, which lets you build support and make things that are useful to more than just yourself. Many people forget this important truth. God doesn't give kingdom wealth to people who are still trying to prove themselves. He gives it to people who know that they are just taking care of what belongs to Him. When you know who you are, you can use your resources wisely. That's why the preparation season took away so many fake supports. The Lord had to set you free from needing to be validated by the same people who didn't understand your path before. He had to show you how to hear His voice above all the other voices. And now that change is getting deeper, something amazing is starting to happen. The weight of old hopes and dreams starts to go away. You start to see that the things that went wrong in your past don't mean that your life isn't important. They showed that God was separating your identity from the weak approval of people who could never be responsible for defining it. You're not just getting better emotionally right now. It's about restoring your identity. It is the time when the chosen one stops asking the world who they are and starts to remember what heaven has already said. And when that change happens, something else can happen. You start to realize that the breakthrough you were hoping for might not come about the way you thought it would. You thought that something good would happen in your life. You thought you would see something outside that would show you that things had finally changed. But the deeper miracle may already be taking place inside you. The biggest changes in the kingdom of God usually happen when someone who was unsure of their place in the story finally takes on the role they were always meant to play. Chosen one. In the next part of this message, we are going to reveal something that changes everything. You might not get the breakthrough you've been waiting for from the outside world. This could be the time when the person you have been becoming finally steps forward and meets the future that heaven has already planned. Chosen one. This is where the message begins to turn in a way many people do not expect. For a long time, you have been waiting for a breakthrough to arrive from outside your life. You imagined that one day a door would suddenly open, a phone call would come, an opportunity would appear, and that moment would be the signal that everything had finally changed. But what if the greater revelation is this: the breakthrough heaven prepared for you has been forming inside you long before it becomes visible around you? Anointed one, heaven does not only release blessings into circumstances, heaven releases transformation into people, because the moment a person truly becomes who God created them to be, entire environments begin to shift around them. Opportunities that once seemed distant suddenly recognize them. Doors that once felt impossible begin to move. Resources that once seemed locked away begin to flow toward the assignment attached to their life. This is why the process you walked through was not simply about surviving difficulty. It was about becoming the kind of person who can steward what is coming next. And when that inner shift begins to take place, something remarkable happens. The person who once felt like they were standing outside the promise suddenly realizes they have been standing inside the preparation all along. Think about a seed planted deep beneath the soil. For a long time, nothing can be seen on the surface. People walking by might think nothing is happening. But something big is happening below the surface. Roots are growing, strength is growing. The framework that will allow the plant to grow in the future is being built quietly. The plant would fall over if it had to grow above the ground before the roots were ready. The growth that could be seen would be faster than the hidden foundation. Chosen one, this is why heaven let you get ready in secret places. The Lord was putting down roots in your faith, humility, discernment, and character, because what comes next in your life shouldn't be weak, it is meant to last. You have tasks that need you to be stable, there are chances that need you to be mature, some resources need wisdom, and God doesn't give those things to people whose lives haven't been made stronger by the journey. This is also why the waiting period can be hard to deal with. Waiting shows what we really think. When nothing seems to be changing, the heart has to face its most important questions. Do I still trust God when I can't see progress? Do I still believe the promise when things are quiet? Every time you chose faith in those times, something was being built inside you. Each time you refused to give up, even when you were tired of feeling bad, your spirit grew stronger. Heaven was marking every time you kept praying, believing, and showing up to obey, even when you couldn't see the results. And now, chosen one, things have changed. The person who used to pray out of desperation now prays out of alignment. The person who used to look for answers everywhere is now better able to hear God's voice. The person who used to question their role in the story has started to see the pattern of divine guidance that has always been there for them. That change is big. The seed is ready to break through the surface when it moves like that. But here's the part that a lot of people miss. Right before the breakthrough happens, when you can see the change starting to happen, the enemy often tries to add one more layer of confusion. He will try to make you think that the change that is happening inside you isn't real. He will say that you are imagining things and that nothing has really changed. He will say that the next chapter you feel is just a wish. Why does he do this? He can put off the moment when you fully step into the role you were meant to play if he can make you doubt the change that God has already made in you. But chosen one, the enemy can't undo what God has already done. There is real growth inside you. What you learned is real. You really did become more resilient. You really do have a clear idea of what your purpose is now. And when those things come together, they start to build up energy that no outside force can stop for good. This is also where the talk about provision becomes important, because the things that will start to show up in your life aren't random gifts. They are tools that will help you do the job that God has been preparing you for. Kingdom provision is never given out just for the sake of personal glory, it is released so that God's work can flow through a person's life and into the world around them. When the Lord gives a chosen one power, money, or a chance, it is because that person has learned something in the wilderness that cannot be learned in comfort. They have learned to be humble, they have learned to rely on God, they have learned how to take on responsibility without letting it change who they are, and that's why your preparation season went the way it did. But before we can see the whole picture, we need to find out one last thing. Even though change has already started, there will come a time when the chosen one consciously agrees with what heaven has already said, and that time is coming up faster than you think. Chosen one, there comes a time in every divine journey when getting ready is no longer the main thing. At some point, heaven gently but firmly asks the person who has been refined to step forward and agree with what God has already said. That moment is not loud, it doesn't always come with loud noises or big signs, it often feels like a quiet realization inside, I am no longer the person I used to be. When that realization sinks in, the spiritual atmosphere around that life changes, because agreement is strong. For a long time, you prayed for God to act, your faith asked God to open doors, change things, and give you what you need. But there is another level of faith that comes out after you have done the work of getting ready. It is the time when the chosen one stops wondering if they are worthy of the promise and starts to agree with who God says they are.